It's the end of the summer, dude.
When Kimberly and I were talking this morning, I said 21 days till the equinox. So it's like,
Yeah, that's
that's a
it.
big deal.
Yeah, just like that. We around here we call this month August.
August?
Yeah, because typically it's foggy the whole month because it's so hot in the interior, and the
Oh,
marine layer inverts, hits the mountain, and you get fog, right?
got it.
And this year we've not had that. It's just been a stream of gorgeous days. And by talking about the weather, I'm going to alienate our audience because we're in one of the really small places where it's been pretty nice. It feels like it's been abysmal for the rest of the country in one way or another, whether it's tragic weather or just unbearable
Yeah, terribly hot. Yeah, we're similar to you. Where we're at is pretty darn beautiful and it's pretty darn spectacular. So,
weather. Well, we
and
had did a show about talking about picking where we want to live and living in places where
oh, that's a good idea. Let's do
we
that.
we I think we did one of those. We
Did we
can't
do?
shut up about how nice it is. And so what I want to talk about today is why do we leave these beautiful places we live to go on adventures, and more specifically, this idea of adventure retreats. And I thought we would talk about that. We've just come off of a storytelling school retreat. I know you've just come off of a pack trip in Montana. Is that right?
That is correct.
And as busy as we are, finding time to hit the pause button on our day to day so that we can go, I'll say play, but it's more of I'm not thinking of adventure. I mean, I'm not thinking of vacation. I'm thinking of travel with an intent of kind of self-growth,
Mm-hmm.
self-introspection,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. Tell me about that a little bit. What do you think about that?
Well, one of one of the things that makes sense to me, and this is a piece that I teach a lot, is one of the primary things that creates change and growth is a disturbance of our homeostasis.
Mm.
In therapy, part of the job of a therapist is to help disturb somebody's homeostasis. And let me define homeostasis
I
for
was
you.
just gonna say, help our audience with that word, Doc.
Yeah. Um, Homeostasis is often that place where we go habitually. Um, it's many people go, whoa, well, homeostasis means sort of the Zen being grounded and breathing, and that's one kind of homeostasis, but that's not what I'm talking about. If somebody is anxious a lot, then that's their homeostasis. If someone is angry a lot, that's their homeostasis. If somebody is we create a homeostasis where we live, where it's comfortable. Um, and so therapeutically, part of what we're wanting to do is help disturb somebody's homeostasis. For instance, if someone says yes to things they don't really want to do, then that's our homeostasis. So our job is to help disturb that. In a setting like this pack trip, and also, I mean, I've been to your retreats, so I know that they happen there too. I mean, both of us are disturbing homeostasis in different ways. And I think that's one of the other big pieces here that's
Mm,
really
mm,
important is
mm.
there's many, many creative ways that we can disturb homeostasis. Um, but on this pack trip, it was like more than half the people, actually about 70% of the people had never been on a horse before. Or if they had been, it was
And you
maybe
took them on a multi-day pack. With how many hours a day were they in the saddle?
Minimum of 3.5 to 4. A couple days we were about 6 hours in a saddle. And mind you, it was 6 hours in the saddle in the wilderness where we began in the wilderness. So our first day was an 8.5 mile trip in. Talk about disturbing homeostasis. So we had our guide, the outfitter, had his horse plus 7 mules that were packed, so pack mules.
Oh,
Then we had 11 riders on 11 horses. So we had well over, oh, and there was an assistant leader and there's also a cook that went in. So we had, uh, I think 15 men altogether plus 20 or 21 equines. So we were 35 heartbeats, 35, 36 heartbeats going in. And so if you could imagine somebody who lives in a city, who, an apartment or a home, and many of the men were, I mean, they're in shape, they work out, but it's like what we were doing was not the norm. And, plus we were all sleeping on cots and tents and, um, and doing all of our cleaning and bathrooming stuff outside and all of those things. So just that situation um, created a huge disturbance. Plus, I don't know if in the audience, if anyone has ridden horses much, it's being on a horse for 3.5 or 4 hours is tiring. Being on a
yes,
horse,
yeah.
it's a different kind of tired than if you'd walk that same distance, um, but being on a horse for 3.5 or 4 hours when you've never been on a horse, I mean, thank goodness these horses were very mellow, kind horses. I mean, we didn't have any negative incidences at all. Um, but it's a lot. And um, so uh, that setting opens up everybody, including me. I mean, it was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay. Um, even though I ride a lot, it's different. I was on a horse I'd never ridden, and I was a sweep, which is the last person in line. So I literally had 20 some equine partners in front of me, as well as 12 to 13, 14 men. So um, and it was like, okay, it disturbs my homeostasis because
Mhm.
when I go ride, it's me and my horse, and
Right,
I've
right.
ridden my horses hundreds of hours. So um, just and then we're in country that was just absolutely unbelievably
Well, I'm
gorgeous,
sure.
beautiful.
When you're talking about, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about disturbing the peace came up in my mind, disturb the homeostasis. And I was trying to think of homeo and stasis, and I don't really know the Latin of those, but stasis feels like static, and homeo is that the static thing. It also got me thinking of, because some of the examples you gave are what's our home base, or what's our base camp, what's our emotional base camp. Like
Mm,
that's right, is
hmm.
like that's the thing I go to when I feel like I'm comfortable. When you said, well, it's the meditative state, or it's that, what's that home base. And I remember Tony Robbins would do stuff, and he would kind of shock you in a very positive way. And if he was talking to someone, he would do something that would, and he said, um, I'm breaking your pattern.
Right.
And that's the same thing, isn't it?
It's the same thing. And what's interesting though is what you talked about is that homeostatic place is not many times people's homeostasis is not that safe. It,
Oh, it,
but it's what they're used to though.
it's comfortable.
Yeah, it's known.
No, okay.
There are many, for instance, um, some people know what it's like um, to be anxious all the time,
Mm.
and that's their homeostasis. And many times, when I'm working with people, when they become less anxious, it's a paradox, but when they become less anxious, they get anxious about not being anxious
Right. That makes sense.
because it's like
That they don't understand that feeling. They're not
they
used
don't
to that
understand
feeling.
that feeling, or the many people who have been abandoned, for instance, over and over, then they get into a friendship or relationship where the person on the other side is real and steady and you can count on them. That's, even though that's what we want, that's scary. Does that make
Which is
sense?
not how I thought the conversation was going to go, but you're absolutely, I mean, you see and seen that. So
Oh,
the
completely.
the the power and purpose of breaking this and being comfortable being uncomfortable. I guess that's what it is.
Completely. Well, and and the work that I do and in the work that you and Kimberly do, for instance, there are many people who come into your retreats and workshops and stuff that uh, one of the first things that you both do is set up a situation where you have each other's back, and that's not normal.
Really.
Yeah, most people. I'll bet right now, if we took 10 people out of the audience and said, at your job, do you feel like people have your back all the time? At your, and my guess is maybe two would say that.
Any time we collect humans together, we begin. It's become a ritual for us to
It,
go around and have everybody feel safe and know that what we're going to do, the things that we're going to be doing and learning is we may fail, we may, but none of that matters, that we got your back. And we're all learning new stuff. And
right. So the idea of having somebody get our back it's a disturbance of the homeostasis,
oh, oh,
because of our homeostatic process is being in a position where we don't feel like our partners have our back, or our work partners don't have our back. It's then we get that, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is this? What is this new thing? Um, and yeah, you and Kimberly set that up beautifully, by the way. And I mean, that was the same thing on this trip. Um, the uh, for instance, I mean, this is a really true. This is a actual thing that was happening. Was I'm actually a pretty decent horseman and rider, but because I busted up my pelvis about 15 years ago, getting on a horse from the ground is very difficult for me.
mm,
So I use a mounting block when I ride. Well, if you're 10 miles into the wilderness in Montana, there's not many mounting blocks. So you're using a rock or a stump or a log or a something. But many times that process, because the horse is not quite used to it, you know, there would be times where I'd have to not have to, but would ask someone just to help steady my horse. And so that was a way that people would have my back. The ways then in return I would have their back is when they got on their horse and they weren't sure what to do, I would be riding next to them and helping them figure out where to put their legs in their hands and et cetera, et cetera. So it's all of those things that are, those are disturbances of homeostasis, because many times people, and especially working with men, it's like they don't feel like someone has their back. They don't feel like they have that. So in the adventure realm, sort of the growth adventure, what would be the best way to put that? Adventure growth, adventure.
We'll go to our branding team and we'll figure out what the
Yeah.
words are. Because I know of several people who have done, coaching and therapeutic coaching and that kind of thing, and they have uh, it's different than adventure travel. They're something experiences anyway. There's one guy who goes to Patagonia twice a year, and you puts you through your
Mm-hmm.
paces. And there's a lot of people who like to do that. So let's shift a little bit to the value of getting away for 2 to 4 days. I think 2 to 4 days is feels feels like an eternity these days. You don't have to be gone for a month, like when Traver did his month in the dark. That was
Mm-hmm.
clearly that kind of thing. How how important? And you're talking to a guy who today I'm going to manage 3/4 of a day off, and I'm so excited to like not do
Not
any.
have to have
Yeah,
an agenda and
yeah, no
a
agenda. It's
schedule.
white space. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Um, how important is it, not just the day off, but that getting away and getting yourself into a growth experience in some way, whatever that is? A, how important is it? And B, what's what happens when we don't do that? We don't make time for that. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the question.
Well, one, I think it's incredibly important. Um, and there's part of what I want to put out is there's so many good ways to do that. Um, but the importance of breaking up our routine, so that breaking up our routine kicks in our processes of creation, of
Mm,
initiative, of exploration, of excitement on a new level in a
mm,
way that we haven't had it before. Um, and it actually, what's interesting about it, and we've talked about this 100 times before, maybe more, is part of what creates attachment is going through a tough time and coming out okay. So let me put that in the context of what you're asking, is when a group of people come from various places and meet in a collective, even though it might be a wonderful collective, like when we went to Kauai with you guys, and a beautiful place, we're still all trying to figure out how to be there.
mm,
And so as a group, we end up going through a little bit of a tough time. It's like, where are we? How do we orient? Which way's which way's the beach? Where are the bathrooms? Where are we going to sleep? I mean, all of those kinds of things. Um, so um, it actually creates a new situation where we have to, with other people from a relational perspective go through a bit of a tough time and come out okay. Whether that's in Kauai or wherever, where I don't know where you had your last retreat that you just spoke about.
We were up in we were in Bainbridge, Washington.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember you talking about that. Yeah, that was like an incredibly beautiful place.
So
And
is it that I love when you talk about our kind of our reptilian sense, that part of our body that just does some, our subconsciously are trying to get to this.
mhm.
Are we seeking homeostasis? We're seeking home base, we're seeking that, and it happens because we're with a group of people. We're all establishing a new yet temporary homeostasis for us collectively.
Yeah, we're actually trying to find a place relationally where we belong, where we can orient, and where we're safe. We often, Kimberly and I often talk, and this actually comes more from Kimberly, an animal an animal knows they're okay when they know where they're at.
Okay.
An
And
animal
we're
has,
animals.
since we're animals, and we pretend like we're not at times, but we are.
We're animals.
And um, when we're able to do that, and then when we're able to do that with others, in relationship with others, that creates a bond
Pack.
and a pack, and that creates safety, which then creates an ability to grow.
And is
And
it fair to say you need to, that those, while they're fresh, those ties that bind us all together, and that even if it's just a family going on a thing, or you and your mate going on a thing, because it's new, you're there's confusion, like where are we, to your point, and we start to build those relational tendrils together, and
mhm,
and but once that's done and we feel safe, the new safe, the new
mhm,
where
mhm,
we
mhm.
are, then we're ready to, I'm going to quote an Eagles song, but we're ready to receive whatever the thing is that we're there to do or get or learn. Is that right?
Completely
Okay.
and totally. And when we can do that in a fun way, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
let me share an experience. Kimberly, for my birthday, took me to a little mountain town about an hour from here. And it was wonderful and a surprise. And uh, she got us a hotel room. And then and there's a restaurant up in that town that we'd love to go to. So, you know, a reservations at that restaurant and a hotel room, and it was an adventure getting there because roads were closed and we had to take a whole circuitous route to get there. We walked into the hotel room and it was the funkiest, weirdest little hotel room that I've ever seen. And this hotel must have been built like in 1950 or something. So, um, but what was so fun about it was both of us went, this is really funky and this is weird. And, we hope that the beds are like halfway decent and, but it was like that camaraderie of laughing and joking and playing with how funky it was and how weird it was. And we just, I mean, I can't tell you how much we laughed about that. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I mean, Kimberly and I have a great relationship, and it was like, oh, well, here's a new fun piece. And even since then, that was like a little over a month ago. I mean, we've referred back to that and
Mm.
joked about it for, 20, 30 times. And it's like, so, so it's those kinds of things that new creative, fun places create depth and relationship, both with ourselves and with others.
I'm curious, the people that are listening right now, can you remember the last time you took time for yourself for personal growth and put yourself into a situation that was completely new and unique and you didn't know what was going to happen next? And I'm such a damn planner. I'm a producer, so my job is to plan to the nth degree, you know. And
Hmm.
for me, it's the um, I'm going to unplan. I'm not going to plan. I'm not in charge. I'm just going to be the guy who's not worried about any of the stuff, and I'm just going to go with the flow. To again, old quote from my hippie days. Um, that that for me, so my homeostasis is goal oriented, planned to the nth
Hmm.
degree. You know that about me, which is why improv is such a therapeutic thing for me every Tuesday night,
Totally.
because I can't, if you plan, you're effed, it's not good. It's not going to work.
It isn't going to work. And the more, and what I know about improv, and mostly because what you've shared, also some of what you and Kimberly have led me through, is it's also not about thinking, and it's not about like gathering information. It's not. I mean, it's more than just not planning. It's like how do we move into a space where we're literally responsive and being creative, which is interestingly enough. I mean, we can do that through improv, and we can do that through, oh, spontaneous is the word I was looking for. How do we do that? And many times that is a disturbance of homeostasis for people.
Yeah, I think all these things are kind of similar variants of what we're talking about,
Completely.
right? And putting planned things that I know for me, in our relationship, I had to learn real quick, like within the first several months, that planning was just not a part of that was not something that was going to happen. Or if there was a plan, it was going to change. And that just is her homeostasis, is like she likes novelty, likes new things kind
Hmm.
of all the
Hmm.
time. And so you learn that, and then you become okay with that, and you find out, hey, it's okay if everything's not planned to the nth degree.
Well, and then what happens with that, interestingly enough, is that then becomes a new homeostasis.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And and so then, because there are some people who, for instance, don't ever plan anything, and once in a while we need to plan things. So sometimes part of growth is, if we don't ever plan anything, then we need to plan something. That's a growth step. If we're always planning something, and and it's like, oh, well, let's figure out a way to be spontaneous here. That's another kind of growth step. So, yeah,
Yep. Do you
that's where the
think it's
adventure
a
comes in.
do you think it's a are you and I unusual in the sense that we're always seeking growth? And I know that about the both of us. Is that natural, or are we a fringe? Is that a fringe behavior?
I think it's less common than people would like to think it is. What I know, what went through my head was, well, I'm like scanning all the people that I hang out with. And every person I hang out with is seeking growth, which is one of the reasons I hang out with them. Um, but there is so much out there where people don't want change. and people don't want to have to dive into something. And so, I'm not 100% sure I would say it's total fringe, but I'm thinking it's probably less less common than we would like to believe.
It feels like, and this is something that's perplexed me as an adult, the change avoidance that people have.
Hmm.
And when I was with my software company, because I mean, I do a show called Influencers and Disruptors. I want to
Hmm.
be around disruptors. I've been attracted to
Totally,
disruptors my whole
totally.
life, right? I just like, oh, there's a completely different way to think, and this person's shaking stuff up. And being in a software company where we're inventing new things, by the very nature of what we do, we are disruptive. Yet
Right.
the people in the organization did not appreciate disruption in their lives. They
Yep.
didn't like to change. They didn't like to do new stuff. They didn't like, and I found that, we would put a new release out and people are like, hold it. You mean I have to learn a new, yeah, but look what happens when you, yeah, I don't want to learn. I have my thing done. Thank you very much. I'm good. And
Hmm.
that's always really, bothered me isn't the right word, but I wonder, gosh, if there's a better way to do something, and it's going to take some confusion in the beginning, right?
Hmm.
Confusion means you're about ready to learn something. That if you can be comfortable being confused, knowing that on the other side of that, you've gone up this ramp of confusion, you've gotten through that, and you're just like, oh, you've leveled up, right?
Right.
And to your point, we need to go through a little bit of that. And if we do that together, that's a bonding thing. But even if you do that by yourself, part of the growth comes from you saying, I'm going to get through that. I know I can get through it. We've talked about um, being comfortable that you may not know how to get there, but you have the resources to do it,
Hmm.
right? We've talked about that. And so I would challenge folks to challenge themselves.
Totally. And one of the pieces, when you mentioned change avoidant, what sort of just flowed through me when you were saying that was I think it might be risk avoidant, because when we change, there's a possibility that
Hmm.
our change is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And is that this new thing that we just tried isn't, it might not be any better,
Mm-hmm.
or we might not learn how to do it, or we might not be able to do certain things. Because part of what growth is is like moving out of our homeostasis is a risk, because it might not be fun, or it might be more fun than we ever expected and we don't ever want to go back, or it might be a challenge of, you know I mean, and even on, for instance, on this pack trip, it's like different men were going, am I physically capable of doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And even for me, I mean, I'm 74, like, am I physically capable of riding a horse that long and, you know, sleeping in basically on the ground? It was a cot that was a little bit off the ground, but sleeping that way, and, you know, using a bathroom in the woods, and I mean, all of those things. Am I physically capable of doing this? And, and other men were going, well, am I physically capable? Am I emotionally capable? Am I, if I sit on a horse for 3 hours, will I be able to walk afterwards? I mean, because there's always at least a possibility that what we this new disturbance is something that there's some risk involved. And what risk
So,
means to me is that it may or may not work.
so I want to leave our audience feeling uplifted a little bit in what is what's the thing that they could say to themselves to it might be a confidence thing that to take a risk, to take a risk in
Mm.
yourself. And what could you what's a give us a tip, Doc, that we might a sentence we might say to ourselves that would get us through that first step to growth.
So actually, there's two pieces, and I love when you ask these kind of questions. And just for the audience, this is an interesting piece, just to point this out. One, I have two pieces, but I don't know that I would have thought about saying them quite the way that you just presented. So what I want to point out to the audience is how you and I work together to get someplace. And we really do depend on each other.
Mhm.
And so that's a whole piece here. So one piece, and I say this often when I'm riding my horse, is we can ride anything.
Mm.
It's the same thing as if Kimberly and I are going to do something. We can do anything.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is we'll just be in it together. But the other piece that I really want people to hold on to, and this is a piece where it's about trusting ourselves, is knowing that we can do what we need to do when we need to do it. And literally saying, I know that I can do whatever I need to do when I need to do it.
I love that, Doc. I love these conversations. I love being able to ask the right questions to get this.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
Well, good questions, great answers. Hey, till we talk again.
Till we talk again, I love you, man.
Love you too.